Step 3 of the 12 steps says we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Why would we do this? Have you ever felt completely overpowered? Have you ever felt completely out of your league? Like you are up against something that you have no chance against. Maybe you feel that way about the recovery marathon today. But my guess is that, like me, you have felt that way about your sexuality at times. Maybe there has been a perfect storm of circumstances that leaves you feeling so overwhelmingly triggered that you feel like you have no other option than to act out. Or maybe in the middle of a perfect storm, there is someone or something or a certain type of porn or a certain sexual fantasy that just feels irresistible. Like, this is way too powerful for me to handle. Have you ever felt that way? Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Most likely you will feel that way again. Sooner or later, our attractions and urges ebb and flow, and sometimes they intensify to the point that we can't do it. We realize we can't do it. And that's when we need step 3, surrender. For me specifically, I've had a sexual fetish for braces. That was always like the kryptonite or the cocaine or the extremely powerful type of sexual imagery and stimulation that would always pull me into porn. And so for me, I have had to really wrestle with, okay, what do I do when this thing which has so much power over me comes back? Here's what I've discovered. Fear fuels fantasy. Reacting to fear or reacting in fear to a fantasy or to a feeling that you can't control, it really just escalates. And science has shown this. If you resist an urge, for example, the urge to masturbate, over the next few hours, it might decrease and increase, but eventually it will snowball. It will be like an avalanche. The more you resist something, the more it persists. Fear and arousal are actually very connected in the brain. Think about what happens when you feel extremely aroused or extremely afraid. Your pupils dilate, your palms start sweating, your heart beats faster, you're jittery, can't think straight. You can feel all the feels, but you don't have access, or your access is compromised to the parts of the brain that are responsible for moral decision making and impulse control. If you can face your fear, you can get out of the cycle. But usually we react to fantasy with fear. And there are some different ways that we do that. One is through fighting the fear. Maybe you've been a part of a recovery program that emphasizes this military mindset of got to conquer my sin and fight the battle for purity and feel like you're at war with your sexuality. The more you fight it, the more you fuel it. Our ability to fight is a limited resource in our brains. We can keep it up for a while, but eventually, especially when we hit one of those perfect storms, we run out of fight. We can't sustain that. And you might think the same about a marathon. You can like push through for a while, but if you're just constantly fighting against the process, then you're not going to get very far. As long as you're fighting something, it has power over you. That's a quote from Anthony DeMello. As long as you're fighting something, it has power over you. It still has your energy, your time, your attention. As long as you're fighting porn, you're still playing the game, and you can always lose. Another strategy might be, okay, I can't fight this, so I'm going to flee it. In fear, sometimes we fight. In fear, sometimes we flee. Instead of attacking it, I'm just going to try to avoid it. Get away from it. Go read my Bible, go pray, go talk to somebody, go take a shower, go run a few miles. And none of that's bad necessarily. It's just a short-term little step. Eventually, we can only fight it for so long, and we can only flee it for so long until we flop. And that's the other fear reaction that I want to talk about: collapse or shut down. Some people call it freeze. Freeze is slightly different, but fight, flight, freeze, flop. In the flop fear reaction, I just think, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I give up. I give in. And by the way, those are all trauma reactions. You think about what happens in the brain when we get triggered, when our trauma gets triggered: fight, flight, freeze, flop. As long as we are reacting in fear, we are reenacting our trauma, and we are continuing the cycle. Even if we're trying our hardest to get out of it. So what does it look like not to react in fear, but to surrender? What does it look like to say, I'm not going to fight this battle anymore. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going to eliminate the battle altogether. What does that look like? It looks like responding in faith. Instead of reacting in fear, we respond in faith. Faith means I'm not going to try to do this myself. I am going to surrender control, even as I'm feeling afraid. And instead of fighting it or fleeing it, I'm going to face it. I live in Colorado Springs. We've got mountain lions on the trails here. And so every once in a while, when I go for a trail run, I see, oh, there's mountain lions active in this area. And you know what they say to do? They don't say fight the mountain lion. And they don't say turn around and run away, because that means you're prey. Just face it and back slowly away. That is how we need to learn how to process those perfect storms and sexual attractions that feel irresistible. To face it, to be with it long enough to ask, why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? How could this be connected to my story? When have I felt this way before? When have I felt the opposite? What happened this week or today that might be really intensifying what I'm feeling right now? I'm going to move closer to this fantasy, this fetish, this attraction, this urge. Find out what it's trying to tell me. That's very different. Instead of battling your sexuality, you're befriending your sexuality. And you know what? When you're in the recovery marathon, you could do the same thing. If you're starting to feel something that's going wrong with your body, don't just fight it, and also don't ignore it. Think, what's my body trying to tell me? Okay, I'm feeling that in my knee right now. Oh, my breathing's getting harder. Where's that coming from? What's coming up for me? Instead of competing against it or trying to control it, you're collaborating with it. You're working with your body. And my friend, even your darkest sexual fantasies are a part of you. It's not necessarily bad, but they're trying to tell you something. It's something your body has been carrying. And you have an opportunity not to conquer it, but to really care for these parts of you that need attention and love. That's a very, very different approach. Responding in faith that there is something good here, that there's something I need to know. Responding in faith that God can handle it, even if I can't handle it. And instead of fighting and running away, face it, breathe, process what you're feeling, and flow. Don't work against it, work with it. And what I primarily want to leave you with is my favorite verse of the Bible that has helped me more than any other verse and sexual temptation and triggers. Exodus 14:14. When the people of God are feeling totally overwhelmed, outmatched, trapped, they're up against the Red Sea on the one side and the Egyptians coming after them on the other side. They think there's nothing I can do. Where can I go? In Exodus 14:14, Moses said, stand firm and see the salvation the Lord will bring you today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still, not to fight, flight, freeze. Be still. Face it. And let him fight for you. Surrender. That's what it means.
Wow. Marvelous, Drew. Thanks, man. I love
You're welcome.
that. Oh, woo. Thanks. I'm holding on to that.
Awesome.